Week 8 NFL Power Rankings. My name is Justin Penik. That is Dalton Feely. And Dalton, just when you think you're starting to get a good read on the NFL, another wacky week happens. I think this week even more wackier than last week.
Definitely. The continuity of this league is just not existent right now. Everything is changing. When we want to zig, it zags. It's wild. Super excited for the rest of the year.
All right, let's get to it. Dalton, we are starting in Caleb Williams-ville. Some of these teams got a victory.
Huge week for Caleb Williams-ville. How about it?
Yeah, so 32, the Panthers, they had a bye. They don't go anywhere. The Cardinals at 31. The Bears, the victorious Bears at 30. The victorious Denver Broncos at 29. The Washington Commanders are joining the Caleb Williams-ville down at the bottom. That's what happens when you lose to the Giants when they only score 14 points. Congrats to the Giants. First half touchdown finally. And then 27, we have the New England Patriots, even though they're coming off a victory.
Shout out to the Bears, Broncos, and Patriots. Very nice. Tyson Bagent getting his first win in his first career start for the Bears versus the Raiders. Brian Hoyer, crappy game to watch. No offense, guys. But yeah, those teams, Caleb Williams-ville, got some winners here. Maybe we're trending in the right direction. Who knows?
Commanders are really bad. I know their record's 3-4 and whatever, and they're treading water, but that defense is really bad. That defensive scheme It didn't even seem like they were prepared for. On paper, there's a lot the Giants offense can throw at you, but execution-wise, there's not a lot the Giants offense can throw at you. And the fact that they're not prepared for Darren Waller and Jalen Hyatt to be speedy and be explosive, that's really, really bad by the Washington Commanders. And Sam Howell also stunk, too.
No idea how they won against the Falcons. They start 2-0, and then they should be 2-5. I don't know how they won that Falcons game.
Almost beat the Eagles. How does that happen?
Sam Howell might get sacked like 120 times this year.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many sacks he's taken through 7 games.
I thought heading into that Giants game that it was all him. A lot of it is him, but then the O-line just got their ass kicked too by Dexter Lawrence. So, and speaking of the New York Football Giants, the thank you next tier, where the Giants are moving up, 26. The Titans are on a bye; they're at 25. The Raiders at 24. The Colts at 23, losing a unexpected heartbreaker to the Cleveland Browns. The 22 at 22, we have the Green Bay Packers. That is the thank you next tier.
Shout out Ariana Grande. The Green Bay Packers, I think that's the most interesting team we have in this group right now.
Yeah.
That is such a weird team offensively, defensively. We talk about not fun offenses, like the lack of explosiveness. The Packers are starting to join that group.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the Patriots, we've had the Giants, and when we talk about these offenses, the Packers are right there. They don't have many players. I know Watson has just come back. I know Aaron Jones has just come back. But really, you're playing the Denver Broncos, and granted, their defense had been bad the first 5 weeks. They turned it around Thursday night versus the Chiefs, and they play well again this week. But your leading receiver is A.J. Dillon at 34 yards. When you're playing the Denver Broncos, that's a red flag. I'm sorry. No receiver has more than 4 catches. No player has more than 35 yards receiving. That's scary. Jordan Love was a little bit more efficient in terms of completion percentage. His first game where he's over 65% completion percentage. That said, he's still under 200 yards passing. He's only thrown over 200 yards in 3 of his 6 starts this season. I'm really worried about this Green Bay offense right now.
Yeah, this Packers team they're pretty boring. I mean, honestly, I've tried to I'm going to get a little invested and keep up what's going on with them, but they're just really boring. I don't think Jordan Love is as accurate as they would want him to be in Green Bay. And I also think when you're going up against the Broncos, I was circling this game against the Broncos as the get right game, or even if it's not a get right game, it should just be a game where you dominate, and it should just be a game at least on the offensive side of the ball, because that Denver offense, Russell Wilson's doing all right, but that Denver defense is historically bad. I was expecting Green Bay to find some sort of footing on the offensive side of the ball, and they're really not. And it's Jaden Reed, Luke Musgrave, and Romeo Doubs as your top 3 receivers right now. 2 of those guys rookies.
Yeah. And Doubs, second-year player or third-year player?
Yeah, second year.
So another young offensive player.
Youngest team in the league, by the way. I think their average age is 25 years old. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, they're playing like it. Their defense, I would say, is a little bit worse than their offense. So just a boring team. I want to keep track of this team because I'm interested by this team, but I just start to watch them and it's just meh.
I'm curious about the line too, because no more Bakhtiari, again, who's been banged up the past couple of years. So you have Zach Tom at right tackle. I think it's Rasheed Walker. I know Jenkins plays a lot of different spots where he's like that jackknife, but I think he's going to be he's been like an interior player this year for Green Bay. Packers fans, shout us out. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm very curious in terms of edge rushers if they're going to be able to contain and protect for Jordan Love.
Yeah,
like that's for a young offense. Like we got to get Love going. We got to get those offensive skill players going. That O-line, we gotta improve too.
Yeah. Aaron Jones, I guess, is still not fully right from that hamstring injury. We'll see. The mid-man tier. Minnesota Vikings get a huge win. Ooh. They're winners of back-to-back, right?
Yeah, 3-4 now.
So they're at 21. The Saints are at 20, which, man, we're not going to really like talk about a lot of teams in this tier fully in depth, but I'm out on the Saints. I'm really out.
Another out offense.
I'm out on Derek Carr. The Bucs are at 19. The Falcons are at 18. Falcons will, I know they're in first place in the NFC South, do something with Desmond Ridder, and then I'll get a little bit more invested, even though I think he had a solid game.
He's a roller coaster ride. He really is a roller coaster ride offensively. That Falcons-Bucs game, like, the Falcons could have won that. Neither team wanted to win that game. Yeah, it was really weird.
One of those.
It was one of those. Baker throws a bad pick with 3 minutes to go in the game, fumbled for the Falcons outside the end zone for a touchback. No one wanted to win that game. Falcons get the win in Tampa Bay. I do want to say, it's kind of funny. We have that mid-meh section, right? And the top 3 teams in the NFC South are still there. Yeah. So at least when we talk about continuity, at least one thing is still the same. The NFC South, still a very mid-meh section.
Wonder what... I think the NFC South this year is still better than the NFC East in 2020.
Okay.
Remember Washington won that division at like 7-9.
That Taylor Heineke?
Or was that the first year's 17 games? I'm not sure. That was Taylor Heineke
because he played the Bucs in the playoffs, 31-23 range. Where it was actually a pretty close game. Scoreboard.
It was a close game. Yeah. I was very convinced that if the Giants made the playoffs, that they would have beat the Bucs. I was very convinced. The Texans are all at 17. They had a bye. That's the mid-man mud tier, and I'll tell you what, the Vikings, another one-score game. 2 weeks in a row where they've won every single game that they've played this year has been a one-score game.
Hilarious.
One day I'll have a good grasp on, and I think like Warren Sharp tries and tackles this stuff about like the nature of teams that are constantly in one-score games and how sustainable is it? How is it not sustainable? Will something eventually give over time? Blah blah blah. But it's just incredible how they had so many games last year where it's one-score games, and now every single game this year you're waiting for something to give, and they always find themselves at the end just right there.
Trying to do some quick math about that one-score game for the Vikings. I think they were 11-0 last year, where it was like unbelievable how good they were in one-score games. This year, every game, so they're 3-4. O'Connell's a second-year coach, so that means they're 14-4 in one-score games through 18 of his first 24 games as head coach. It's crazy that the percent. That's 75% of your games you're in one-score games.
And he's a play caller too, which give him credit because a lot of coaches will sometimes, if you are a coach and a play caller, they'll have a hard time transitioning to, I got to manage timeouts, I got to manage a whole team. If the defense is on the field, I'm also preparing the offensive plays and the menu that you're preparing for that drive. So credit to him for getting right. And also credit to that. There were some fun things that the Vikings did schematically against the San Francisco 49ers, and even without Justin Jefferson too. Sans Justin Jefferson. So let's want to move to the playoffs. Why not tier?
Why not?
This is where things get a little bit more fun. The Jets had a bye at 16, big game against the Giants. Honestly, for both of those teams and how they're viewed for the rest of the year. Are you really? I think it's a little bit more important for how the Giants are viewed than the Jets.
The Jets should win that game.
The Jets should win that game, Justin, but I'm not convinced that they will.
The Jets are probably going to win by double digits. Like, I feel rather confident. That defense is too good. Your offense sucks. I'm sorry.
Giants defense playing a little bit better too. Andrew Thomas may be back. I think Tyrod's still going to start. Anyway, Jets are at 16. The Chargers are at 15. They drop down. We're a good offense. Be damned. We're dropping you. All right. The Steelers are at 14. They somehow keep plugging away. The Rams are at 13. The Browns are at 12.
I just want to say I'm a huge Chargers stain, but listen, we're doing power rankings. It's where we were projecting you, but you got to win games.
Yeah, you got to win.
Ultimately, it doesn't matter how efficient you are. It doesn't matter how good you look. The most important thing is getting that W, getting into that win column. Yeah. Chargers fallen. They have a worse record than the Raiders. They have and we look at the Raiders as this blah team.
Yeah.
The Raiders are 3-4. The Chargers are 2-4. Right? So that's saying something to begin with. They're half a game up on the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos have been humiliated this year, and yet they're only a half a game in front of that team. The Chargers, I'm worried about them. I think Staley, this is probably it.
Yeah.
At the end of the year, if the Chargers don't make the playoffs, you fire him, hire Ben Johnson from Detroit, pair him up with Justin Herbert, have a good time. I know, talking off season already for the Chargers, but I'm really worried about this Chargers team, man. Yeah. Herbert has missed a couple throws this season too.
I was going to ask you, you're a big like situational guy and, looking at certain situations in certain spots.
Yeah.
Herbert's been getting a little flack in the fourth quarter. And I think like rightfully so. He's had some bad throws and some missed throws in the fourth quarter. Do you have any take on that?
I think I don't want to say it's just the fourth quarter. Like he's had throws. I was watching like the Monday night game versus Dallas. Like there were a couple of throws. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, that was all throughout that game.
Yeah. I think it's just sometimes the Chargers have had this issue for a while too, where in close games, fourth quarter, they just find ways not to win those games. And I don't want to just give it all on Herbert because I think that's the quarterback position is such a high praise, or get completely blasted.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The one thing I'll say is with Kellen Moore, I thought they'd be a little bit better in the fourth quarter. You know what I mean? Like Kellen Moore is one of the best play callers in football. And so with that being said, they're 19th in fourth quarter points this season.
Wow. Okay.
Averaging under a touchdown. We want to win those games. Like we got to put points in the second half of the game.
Yeah, and this is something that we have said in the past. I've compared Brandon Staley to Mike Zimmer, and I honestly think that's a slight to Mike Zimmer. Where Brandon, Mike Zimmer, I think, wound up getting fired because he's a good defensive coach that can't have a good defense, and Brandon Staley has always had a bad defense. Whereas Mike Zimmer, at least I feel like at the start of his Viking tenure, he had good defenses, and man, just Brandon Staley has not been a defensive coach that hasn't been able to figure out how to have a good defense. So those are the Chargers.
Let me just add, I just did a quick search. I was curious because when I watch the Chargers games, I don't feel like they have the ball out in the fourth quarter because I feel like the defense can't get off the field.
Sure.
Chargers 31st in time of possession in the fourth quarter. So they don't have the ball. It's under 40%. The team below them is the Arizona Cardinals, who have been horrific in the fourth quarter themselves. So, I mean, you don't have the ball. I also, got to give some blame to the defense too for Los Angeles.
Yeah, for sure. So the Rams and the Steelers played each other this week.
Yeah, that was an interesting one.
And we have the Rams at 13. We have the Steelers at 14.
Right.
So there's going to be a lot of people that are angry. Oh, well, the Steelers beat the Rams. Why? Blah, blah, blah. And I think, hey, in quite a way, we have done this before where teams have beaten like another team and we've put in that team ahead. So I can get the outrage here, but I will say the Rams are a better team than the Steelers. I think they are. And I think the Rams, I think this will be a team. Weren't the Jaguars like this last year where their record does not indicate how good they are? And I think the Rams are prime example one in the NFL this year of they are playing better than what their record indicates. IMO.
Yeah. Ironically, we were talking about the Chargers' fourth quarter struggles. The Rams struggled in fourth quarter versus Pittsburgh. That was their huge issue. 0 points on their last 3 drives of the game. They put together 20 yards in the fourth quarter.
Wow.
20 yards. Stafford failed to complete a pass in the fourth quarter too.
Wow.
Second time in his 15-year career, he didn't complete a pass in the fourth quarter where he threw at least 4 passing attempts in the quarter.
Crazy.
Which is unbelievable. I give credit to the Steelers too. Like, they are not the prettiest team. Like, they're not going to win the Miss America competition in terms of like winning by beauty, right? But they do a really good job of just finding ways to win. Mike Tomlin, obviously one of the most underrated coaches in football.
He's done that for years, just find ways.
They have won the last 6 games coming off a bye week for Mike Tomlin. They're 13-4 off the bye week with Mike Tomlin as a head coach.
It's like that's like a known thing too, where teams struggle off a bye. Like I'm excited. Like, I'm a Giants fan. I'm excited to play the Jets because they're coming off a bye week.
Right, and you'd think because they're more rested that a team would be more prepared in that aspect.
Right.
And no.
But no, that usually is not the case.
I still worry about the Steelers, though. They had 91 yards at half. I think they had like 110, 108 range in the third quarter. So offense still isn't like, we're not changing that narrative about that offense in Matt Canada, but like they still win those games. Deontay Johnson's back, which is huge. Big possession receiver.
He had some explosive plays, and it was Deontay Johnson running good routes, getting open, had some yak plays, and then George Pickens' back shoulder throws on the sideline, which, I mean, hey, say whatever you want about back shoulder throws. There are some people that have the opinion that if you're an offense that relies on back shoulder throws and you don't really have a good scheme to begin with, That's George Pickett's strength. I mean, that lean into what your players do well. And I thought Jaylen Warren looked pretty solid too. I think he only had like 6 rushing attempts. He didn't have that many rushing attempts, but he was explosive and he looked pretty decent. He looked pretty good too. So Steelers find ways to win games. I do think the Rams are. I don't know their schedule on the top of my head, but I think the Rams are going to be one of those teams that their record will eventually pick up.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so. I think that they're a good offense that is efficient. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, one of the best wide receiver duos in the NFL right now, which is crazy. Puka Nacua did really have a good game.
Yeah.
It's just that obviously they couldn't finish in the fourth quarter. Where was that offense in the fourth quarter?
Dallas, Green Bay next 2 weeks for LA. You got to win at least the Green Bay game. Dallas will be tough. It's in Dallas too, but you can sneak both those wins. You're back in the NFC West competition there.
Excited for that game.
Yeah.
Playoffs, you better be there. We have the Jaguars at 11, the Seahawks at 10, the Bengals at 9. They were on a bye. The Bengals are like that one team that hanging on, and we talk about efficiency all the time, and that's one of those. I'm going with my. I'm going
more of like what we think they should do.
I'm going with my gut here.
Yeah.
The Lions are at 8. They dropped out of Lombardi Land. The Cowboys had a bye. They are at 7. And the Ravens jump up to 6 after kicking the Lions' ass.
I mean, it was a fucking smacking. It was a smackdown.
3 quarters, they didn't score a single point in the Lions.
It was unbelievable. Baltimore had 28 points before the Lions had a first down. This wasn't even close. It's amazing. And during that same time frame, at first down, 16-0, Baltimore had the advantage. Yards, 325 to 13. This was a complete smackdown, and this was a true test for Detroit. They came into the game, they won their last 4, all by 14 plus points. This was a really good true test to see how this Detroit team is built. And I'm not super worried about them, but you go to Baltimore and you lose by 32 points.
They just don't show up.
Brutal. Jared Goff threw the ball 53 times, and that's because you're down 28 early. Ironically, this was his most passing attempts since his first career start with Detroit, week 1 of 2021. So it's just ironic that it's a little bit of a full circle. First start, throw is 57 passing attempts, still the most he's ever thrown with the Lions. Yeah. This week, 53 because of the game script.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Ravens are one of those teams that, man, they sometimes will win games nasty because they'll play teams that they should expect to beat said team that they're playing. Yeah. And they don't. And sometimes it's like either a close game or they'll lose a game. And the Ravens are sometimes a team that makes you want to pull their hair out. And now they come out here and they just kick ass.
Yeah.
Mark Andrews has a couple scores. Zay Flowers has some big plays. They have a lot of explosive plays through the air. I think didn't Justice Hill have an 80-yard reception at one point?
Gus Edwards,
excuse me. Those running backs, you get confused over there in Baltimore. And it just goes to show that Lamar Jackson still, J.K. Dobbins going down, really does suck for them. Lamar still doesn't have awesome weapons if you compare it to especially the rest of the AFC competitors. But Lamar's still playing some good football. They're still doing good things. That Ravens defense, very underrated too. One of the best units in the league.
Yep.
Going from one defense coordinator from Wink Martindale to the next. And they're looking really good. Kyle Van Noy, shout out. Resurgence game. Two sacks this past week.
Yeah, and I mean, that defense, they've allowed a league low of 7 touchdowns this season. So that defense, John McDonald doing a great job. Lamar has been very efficient, like you said. Baltimore moving up in the rankings for a reason. That was their first. We talked about them last week where they've won ugly.
Yeah.
This was a fantastic win. This was we're here. We're at this true 5-2 team. I know the Browns are getting some love. I know the Steelers have gotten some love, but we're in first for a reason.
The Seahawks are the one team. I don't really want to have a full-fledged segment on them.
Yeah.
But the Seahawks are the one team that I'm really watching. The next 2 weeks, they have the Browns and they have the Ravens. So that's actually a pretty good transition to bring up the Seahawks. So I think the Seahawks, one of those underrated teams in the NFC. We're seeing, even the 49ers fall off a little bit in the NFC West. Could the Seahawks kind of come up in here, maybe even take the division? But even if not, even if they, let's just say they make it as a wild card team, I'm looking out for those Seattle Seahawks as to maybe get better as the season goes on. Maybe they make an acquisition at the trade deadline to add somebody. I don't necessarily know where they would add somebody, but I could see them maybe being a little bit aggressive at the trade deadline and maybe acquiring somebody. Maybe that's a team to look out for. So,
wow, okay, I like that.
2 big games for the Seattle Seahawks coming up, and that'll be a really big decider on what kind of team they're going to be. Let's go to Lombardi Land. We have the Bills at 5, still at 5 despite losing to the Patriots and came very close to losing against the Giants 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. The Dolphins are at 4. They lost to the Eagles. The Chiefs are at 3, coming up a few spots. 49ers at 2.
Even with back-to-back losses, they're still there, folks.
And the Eagles are back at 1.
They just find a way. It's funny we got a little bit some egg on our face here. We had a great conversation about who we thought going into last week was the best team in the NFL. You said the 49ers, I said the Dolphins, and guess what? Both of them lost. Crazy how that works out. Once again, though, Philly, they are 6-1. Them and the Eagles are the only 2 teams who are 6-1. Ironically, both teams made the Super Bowl last year. But they still don't win. This was the first time I'm like, okay, that's a nice, they looked solid.
Yeah.
But Jalen Hurts, 9 touchdowns this year, 8 picks. He leads the league in interceptions, but it doesn't matter when you're 6-1 this year.
Right.
It's crazy. He threw a pick 6 on Sunday Night Football too. He only had 6 picks last year. So it's funny, we're seeing a little bit more turnovers from Hurts now. Granted, interceptions could be luck-based too.
Yeah.
But eight interceptions already. And they're still winning games. A.J. Brown, 5th straight game with 125 yards. The Eagles defense, they just acquired Kevin Byard, which is going to be great for that back end, helping out Reed Blankenship because he's banged up.
Yep.
You trade Terrell Edmonds in that deal. I'm excited, man. How he does it again, getting that acquisition. The rich just get richer. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you feel like there were certain times of the year where the Dolphins were playing perfect football.
Yeah.
Perfect football. Now, it's well, what do you do when stuff goes wrong? I think that's the big question for the Dolphins. I think it's a big question for the 49ers. I still think it's a little bit of a question for the Chiefs, even though they've quietly won every single game since week 1. So I think that's a team like the Chiefs. I think they're only going to get better now that those receivers are, they're the young receivers. They're forming more chemistry with them and Mahomes, and they have more time to get better in general. But the Eagles this is what impresses me and why it's undoubtedly Eagles number 1 right now. Because the Eagles, it hasn't been perfect for them. And it's not going to be perfect in the playoffs. It's not going to be perfect if you're going to go on a little bit of a run. It's not perfect, but you're still finding ways to win, and they still look good while they're doing it. Their offensive line is still really good. They're converting on 3rd and short and 4th and short. I hate saying the word tush push because it's
brotherly shove
every 10 seconds on an NFL broadcast. It doesn't even matter if it's not even an Eagles game.
Yeah.
It's tush push, tush push. Shut up. We need to find a different phrase than tush push.
Brotherly shove. No?
I don't know, man. But I don't even like talking. I don't even like talking about it. But it's just a weapon that now that more teams are starting to do it, and it's not working. I'm pretty sure the Vikings even tried it on Monday Night Football, and it didn't work for them. What they do is just so different from what any other team can do because they just have the best O-line and they have the best front.
Yeah,
they have the best front in football. Interior edge rushers all throughout. So. What they do is just so unique, and they're so good in the areas that every NFL team wants to be good in.
I do want to say the Dolphins, they're very fun to watch. I still think they're very good. People are probably a little out on the Dolphins, especially losing to Philly on Sunday night. But I will say the one thing I'm a little skeptic on, Dolphins wins this year. They're 5-2. They've played Los Angeles Chargers, New England Patriots, the Denver Broncos, New York Giants, and the Carolina Panthers. Collectively,
Chargers are probably the best team in there, and they're 2-4.
Yeah, collectively, they're 8-25.
Yeah.
So they haven't beaten anybody yet. They lost to the Bills and they lost to Philly. 2 very good teams. Now, you played some really low teams and some really high teams. Next couple weeks they'll be interesting because you have New England again.
Yeah.
Then you have Kansas City, where Miami and Kansas City go to Germany to play.
Oh, fun.
You bye week. Then it's Raiders, Jets, Washington, Tennessee again.
Wow.
So, you have those highs and lows. I'm very curious to see how they turn out just because they've beaten some bad teams. You're supposed to do that. I want you to go out there and beat a really good team. Prove to us why you're in Lombardi Land, why you're this high. This offense is electric. Do it against a good defense.
Yeah. And the one thing, Tua did it against Buffalo in a couple plays and did it against Philadelphia. There are just some plays and some throws where it's dude, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You don't need to make that throw where he forced the ball into double coverage to Raheem Mostert. in the end zone on Sunday Night Football. And I was like, there's no need to make that throw. Now, that might have been an error. Chris Collinsworth was talking about how Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert were running similar routes very close to each other. But as Tua still, you can't make that throw where there's three guys by two Miami offensive players. There's just some throws where it's just like Tua reverts back to the guy that was made fun of pre-Mike McDaniel. Just like, dude, what are you doing? You can't be doing that. Now, you know what's funny, Dalton? Heading into this show and heading before pre-Monday Night Football, I was going to say to myself, because I'm thinking to myself, the 49ers are going to win. They're going to remain at number 1, and we're going to have a 49er Eagle 1 and 2 power ranking. And then nope, Monday Night Football happened, and all that goes out the window. So I was going to say that you want to know the difference between Tua and Brock Purdy is that Tua will make those head-scratching decisions and sometimes in key moments against good teams, and Brock Purdy doesn't. Well, lo and behold, Brock Purdy did that a little bit Monday Night Football, and he's had back-to-back weeks where he's thrown some interceptions. So I can't. That talking point is dropped for now. However, I love Tua. I love what he's doing. I'm still riding and relying on Brock Purdy a little bit more.
Can I just wrap up with one question to ask you to finish it off?
Yes.
Are the Dolphins too reliant, or the passing game too reliant on the run game? Because they ran for 12, they had only 12 rushing attempts and went for 45 yards. Is that pass game built too much off that run game, do you think? Or do you think that it was just I don't want to say a fluke, but it was a bad game, if you will?
There's good data on this.
Sorry to put you on the spot. I know.
There's good data on this. So there were 19 total series where the Dolphins had a first down. This is not the beginning of an offensive series I'm talking about.
Okay.
19 total plays where the Dolphins had a first down.
Got it.
9 of them started with a rush. 10 of them started with the pass. 55.6% that started with the rush eventually ended with a first down. 70% of the 10, so 7 out of those 10, that started with the pass wound up being a first down.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm pretty surprised to see. That the Miami Dolphins, you would think that there'd be a little bit more pass heavy, maybe especially on early downs. So maybe you're right. Because certainly, if they were still 70% isn't fantastic for throwing the ball, because you want to be a little bit higher. Like the Eagles were at 81.2%. That's pretty good when they started with the pass. So certainly, throwing the ball in early downs, maybe getting back to that for the Dolphins. I know their running game has been really good. Maybe that's an answer for them. All right, Dalton, that is it. Week 8 NFL Power Rankings. We will see you next week. And hey, we had a very different looking list this week. We probably will have a very different looking list next week. See you then. Peace. Subscribe, like, comment, all the stuff. YouTube. Bye.